welcome back to the Zelda Board Podcast. This is episode 3, part 2, and I'm still here with HextupleyooDOT and Twilight Prince 12, my guest host for the evening. And now we already sort of talked a lot about Smash Brothers, more than we were even planning to. So now we're actually going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about this generation of consoles in general. We've been looking for a topic to talk about a lot this week, and we couldn't really come up with anything. So we're just sort of going to go with the natural flow of conversation as we talk about Wii U versus PS4 versus Xbox One. So go ahead, guys, just get it started. Give your thoughts on sort of how this generation has gone so far.
I guess I can start off. So I will be the first to say that I don't really follow either Microsoft or Sony as companies nearly as much as I do Nintendo.
I think we can all say that.
Yeah, but
and it's not even necessarily a bias. It's just sort of
right.
It just happens to be our favorite company. Like, I'm not a fanboy or anything, but I think we can all say that.
But as far as the consoles themselves are concerned, I think the Wii U is certainly the underdog in terms of power and capabilities and things like that. But as far as the library is concerned, I think the Wii U is the most interesting and the most diverse. And there doesn't seem to be nearly as much content for especially PS4 and Xbox One, at least in terms of exclusives. So I don't really see a good reason to get both of those consoles. For me, and I feel like for maybe your average gamer, if you're interested in a lot of IPs, then maybe the best thing to do would be get either the Xbox One or the PS4 and then get a Wii U. And if you're interested in PC games, then maybe just a PC and a Wii U, because there's a lot of games that go to all three: PC, Xbox One, and PS4. So that's kind of my thought on it. Obviously, I am biased towards Nintendo, but
one of the things that I always thought about this generation of consoles, and rather I should say that I have thought since both of them were released last year, was the library of exclusives has been like incredibly weak. It seems like both consoles are getting every game, and I may be totally off on this because, like I said, or like Hex said rather, we don't necessarily follow Sony and Microsoft as well as we follow Nintendo, just because we have stuff to do, and Nintendo happens to be our favorite platform to play games on. But my perception, at least, is that the library of exclusives for both of those consoles are incredibly weak, and it's ironic because no one will buy Nintendo consoles because it doesn't get the games that everyone wants to play, like Call of Duty and Madden and all this stuff. And yet neither of the other consoles have any exclusives, but people are like constantly fighting over which one is better. So it's sort of like if you're comparing power, it's like, okay, that's fine, but I don't see power necessarily as a reason to buy a console. I'd look at the game, you know.
Well, what I've noticed is there's been a lot of talk about past generations and times when power wound up not mattering much, like with most notably the PS2. It had great library of games, so people favored that one a lot. The power difference wasn't necessarily as big back then, but
No.
Yeah, there was something Hex said that kind of resonated with me, sort of forgetting what it was, but it was similar to what I was thinking, that well, so far I'm not paying a lot of attention to the PS4 and Xbox One yet. I believe as the PS4 is out longer, I'll find more games on there I'm interested in. But when you talked about the PS4 and the Xbox One, and you'll just get one of those most likely, yeah, I believe it was like that last generation for the most part. I knew a lot of people who settled on either 360 or PS3,
Right.
and then they maybe got a Wii on top of that if they wanted the Nintendo exclusives. So in that sense, I see why Nintendo doesn't want to be too much like the other two companies, because people do seem to pick between one or the other because you get a lot of the same kind of games on Sony and Microsoft. But if Nintendo can offer a reason to be a console you buy on top of that, that would work well for them. I'm not sure if the Wii U's gonna catch on. I think it deserves to. I sort of like it more than the original Wii already. It hasn't been out as long, but
Yeah,
there's been some great titles for it so far. Actually, PS3 was a console I loved last generation, but you're right that I'm not following PS4 news much yet. Feels like I should wait for the the best games to come out, but I expect there will be some great ones. Um, but right now the Wii U is got the best flow of titles right now. Yeah.
I should clarify. Earlier, I said that the PS4 and Xbox One had no good exclusive games. I mean, right now, this moment. I know everyone's going to say, "Oh, did you watch their E3 this year? They all have a bunch of great, exclusive titles like Sunset Overdrive, Halo Collection." I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of a Sony one that I care about, but I can't right now. So,
Like Uncharted, huh?
yeah, Uncharted. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, so they're coming, right? They're coming, but not yet, right? Like I'm not gonna buy an Xbox One right now. Not gonna buy a PS4. Although I will say Xbox One minus Kinect changed my mind about the console in general, because Kinect is disgusting. I don't want to see that anywhere near my consoles.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a PS4 at some point, but I feel like no urgency to do it. Like the longer I wait, the better. Sort of the same with the PS3 for me. I waited until the Slim came out with the price drop. So
Yeah. Do you think the perception is kind of the same with Wii U's, that people are quote unquote waiting for the games? Like that's always the argument that I see is like, oh, it has no games. Well, you can't really use that argument anymore unless you're really just not interested in games like Donkey Kong and the now Bayonetta, Smash Brothers, just a couple months away, Hyrule Warriors, even Mario Kart. I mean, it's not like this console has no games. I don't see much of an excuse for not getting it anymore unless you're genuinely not interested in those games.
I still know a couple people who say they're waiting for Zelda. Like that's the big one that'll make them buy it. So I guess some people may still be doing that. You know, I still think it's worth getting it now for Mario Kart and Smash and Donkey Kong and stuff. Yeah, but
I think the most disappointing thing to me about the Wii U's sales situation is like people like third parties are not going to support this console unless it has astronomical sales numbers. Like we saw this with the Wii. Like even Call of Duty was on the Wii by the end of the generation. But now, we're not going to get Call of Duty, which is fine, but if you're talking about sales, like people aren't going to latch onto this console no matter what happens because it doesn't have Call of Duty, it doesn't have Madden. Even if it has a game they want to play, if Call of Duty or Madden is their number one game, they're not going to go to Wii U. They're going to go to another one of the consoles. And I think third-party support has always really been Nintendo's biggest, I guess, bugaboo, for lack of a better word, and it just never seems like they can get it right, and I don't understand why, really.
I think a large part of it is the power difference because developers are wanting to do cross-platform as much as possible because that means a bigger market. But with the Wii U power difference being an issue, there's a lot more work that you'd have to put into porting a game from PS4 or Xbox One to Wii U just because it can't do the same things. It wouldn't be a straight port. They would have to make settings scalable or things like that. So that's definitely one factor that detracts from the Wii U's appeal. But yeah, I think that's the biggest factor. And I don't know what they can really do other than
They have to sell a lot because,
Right.
like I said, the games started appearing on Wii by the end of the generation once it had sold, 80 million.
And one other big
Mm.
issue is Nintendo is solely about creating video games. One benefit that both Sony and Microsoft have is that they have other departments that they can generate revenue from. And so if their video game department is failing or not producing profit, they can still carry the weight of it because they have all of these other things to fall back on. Nintendo, all they have is their video game stuff, and I think that's a large part of why Nintendo consoles these days tend to not have as much power because then they can keep the price point low enough that it's more appealing to consumers.
It
Where
doesn't even put it in the competition with PS4 and Xbox One, basically, based on price alone.
Right, and so if people aren't buying PS4s or Xbox Ones because of the price being too high, because of the power, well, they can keep the video game department afloat because they have all of this other revenue coming in. So I think that's a big factor as well that impedes on Nintendo's ability to keep up technically.
That does make a lot of sense. I guess one other thing I wanted to mention is we have these games that have already been released, and actually one of the bigger problems of this generation, in my opinion, is that people developers are still developing for 360 and PS3. I saw a game today that's coming out like next year. I can't even remember what it is, but I was in GameStop and I just saw it being advertised, and it's still on 360 and PS3. It's coming out mid next year or something. And it's like, I don't know how you can expect people to latch on to any next gen console when you're still developing for last generation. If the upgrade isn't that much bigger, if you're going to buy Watch Dogs on PS4 when you can still get it on PS3, people will just think, well, I'll just get it on PS3 and wait for something else later. And I feel like that's almost why all the next gen consoles are struggling. I mean, they're all struggling for different reasons, but that's one of the main reasons that the Xbox One in particular probably isn't selling, is because people, since Xbox 360 sold so many units, people are just buying those games on the 360 instead of splurging and getting the new thing, the Xbox One. Even though there are some games.
Yeah, I've gotten that feeling a lot, actually, that if they're going to keep making sure that they can release these games on the PS3 and 360, they're not going to be able to sell as big of a leap as, hey, this game is so advanced, we could only make it on the PS4.
They're definitely not. They're not capitalizing on the next generation. I just did air quotes, quote unquote, next generation. And that brings to mind my other question that I was thinking of, is if they are still developing these games for PS3 and Xbox 360, there's no excuse why they can't be on Wii U, because we know that Wii U is at least as powerful as those consoles. So if it's sales numbers they're looking for, I don't even know why they're bothering to develop for PS4 and Xbox One, because those are not selling on those systems because nobody has them. So I don't really understand the logic of developers, and it's just unless it's something with Nintendo specifically. There's a reason, Project Cars has been delayed on Wii U. There's a reason that we haven't heard a word about Watch Dogs, and I think it has something to do with Nintendo's third-party thing.
I think part of it might be they're willing to develop for older consoles like 360 and PS3 just because there's already a gigantic install base there. But they also have this urgency to create games for the new generation just because that is what's up and coming, and they're going to have to start supporting it soon, because if it's not the PS4 and the Xbox One, it's not going to be the Wii U, just because, again, the install base is too small. But on the same token, they're not going to port to Wii U even if its power is comparable to 360 and PS3 just because the install base isn't there, and it might not be worth it to them, because there can be issues porting even between the 360 and the Wii U,
right?
Just because of architecture differences or things like that. I don't actually know if there's a large difference with the architecture, but it can be a huge issue, because I know porting between mobile devices like iPhone or Android, that's a huge difference there, even if they're comparable devices.
And from what I understand, Wii U is actually fairly difficult to develop for. Like, that's every report that I've heard is that it's a difficult console to work with. And I can understand why they necessarily wouldn't want to go there if the install base isn't super high, and if they don't feel like the reward is there. But for a game like Watch Dogs, I feel like there was just so much hype surrounding it.
Yeah, I did want to mention that I heard the Wii U went with like a Power PC architecture that's very different from the PS4 and Xbox One, which is one of the things that's holding back third-party developers from wanting to develop for it. So it does sound like if the architecture is really different and it's underpowered, that's just a lot of strikes that make developers not want to bother, especially, including the small install base.
So I guess it's prediction time. Since we've sort of given an overview of sort of a Nintendo-based overview of the whole situation, what console is going to end up in first place by the end of the generation in terms of sales, and who's going to get last? last generation. Of course, we had Wii and then Xbox 360 and PS3, and actually, I think PS3 may be almost
Worldwide.
closing the gap on the 360, just for everyone's reference.
I thought worldwide it surpassed 360.
It's possible. I'll look up the numbers real quick while you guys are talking.
Who did win last generation? Was it?
It was Nintendo.
Okay, that's what I was under the impression.
By a considerable amount, in fact. I think it was like almost 15 to 20 million.
Wow.
Yeah, the console sales were huge for the Wii. Yes.
But as far as predictions for the new generation is concerned, I think the PS4 is going to win out, and I think the Xbox One is going to come in last. That's my prediction, just because the trajectory that we're currently seeing, we're seeing the Wii U rise, and we're seeing the Xbox One kind of stagnate. I think pretty recently Wii U's been outselling Xbox One weekly, has it not?
It has for the last since Mario Kart came out, basically. Oh, by the way, got the numbers. PS3 has very recently passed Xbox 360. It's 83 million to 82 million, and Wii has sold over 100 million. So yeah, not really close. But that did surprise me, because Xbox 360 has sold almost 70,000 more software units or something. Anyway, that's not really relevant here, but back to the conversation. I really don't know if the Wii U can outsell the Xbox One. It really just depends on how dominant the PS4 is. And since it doesn't have any games right now, it's sort of a stalemate, I guess, between the two. I mean, PS4 is obviously still selling more, but neither really has any games. So it's just a matter of who gets that first big hit game, and I think the Master Chief Collection could be that for the Xbox One.
Yeah, I always tend to lean toward the prediction that the Xbox One will place second above the Wii U. It'll bring back fans of the 360 when things like Master Chief Collection come out. And also there's a lot of talk about that although the Wii placed first in console sales, fans, owners of the system were more disappointed later on when less games were being released for the Wii compared to the other systems.
Yeah.
And then of course some of the more casual market moved on to just playing on their tablets and smartphones and
there
such.
was so much shovelware on Wii U. It's just easier to deal with that crap on your mobile device, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking maybe Nintendo won't be able to get enough buyers in, compared to the Wii to get a second placing. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Hex is right. I feel like Nintendo deserves to do fairly well this generation.
It's funny because I think Nintendo is sort of learning a very hard lesson right now, which is, yeah, it's great to pull in the casual market, but the casual market is going to be fickle because they'll just go to the next cool big thing. Whereas hardcore gamers, they're going to stick with you, but they sort of abandoned those same people last generation with the Wii because they got so far away from doing what they do best, which is making, core titles that every hardcore gamer can enjoy. And obviously they're kind of getting back to it now because I think they realized their mistake. I just think they realized it too late. They realized it after the smartphone and the mobile device had sort of taken over the casual gaming market. And it's funny because everyone talks about how the casual market affected the 3DS, the mobile market affected the 3DS. But I think it also kind of affected the Wii too, because of the reasons you were saying.
One addendum to my thinking here. The Xbox One has a big stigma to fight at the moment, just because they started off so weak with their emphasis on non-game features. And
yeah.
I think they're still overcoming that even to this day. They recently stopped forcing Kinect on people, but I think a lot of people have kind of already gotten their mindset on PS4 as their go-to
gaming
system for exclusives for PS4 as well as the ones that are going to be cross-platform. And with so many great games on the horizon for Wii U, I feel like the notion of Wii U and PS4 as the two consoles to get for this generation, I think that's starting to get instilled in people's minds at this point. So maybe the new Halo collection, I don't remember exactly what it's called, will pick up some momentum for Xbox One, but I mean that's remake stuff, right? There's nothing new on that.
and Sunset Overdrive, and that's it. For this year, that's it.
So
I can't think of anything.
So I don't know that the Xbox One can overcome the stigma fast enough before people keep buying PS4 as their go-to like central console, with the Wii U serving as kind of like a satellite console for the Nintendo exclusives. I mean, a lot can change, but I can only see the Wii U gaining more momentum as these new games are coming. So it's hard to say, really. I think it's going to be a tight race between Xbox One and Wii U.
Yeah, I think PS4's got it locked up. I think you can lock. It's amazing. When was the last time you could say? The last time you could say you can lock up this generation early was PS2 Dreamcast days, because PS2 had a DVD player, and that was like, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
Back when DVDs were a thing,
I remember for a while it seemed like the Xbox 360 was selling a lot because people were on Xbox Live, and so that they wanted to play Call of Duty. All their friends were on Xbox Live, so they bought it for that, even though it's also on the PS3. So if the PS4 gains enough momentum, it might really slow down the Xbox One sales, kind of like the 360 did to the PS3 for a while.
Yeah, that is true. Like, I remember back in 2007 or whatever, and the PS3 was just doing horrible, and everybody had an Xbox 360, and I was like, I don't know how the PS3. In fact, it's a miracle that they ever caught up, because they've surpassed them now, and it's a miracle because at the beginning of that generation, or even 5 years in, would you have said the PS3 is going to get close to the Xbox 360 in sales and pass them in the next 5 years? I certainly wouldn't have thought that.
No, it was an interesting case with Sony there, where they turned something around. I always say I want the Wii U to pull a PS3 and turn around. So we'll see if anything like that happens.
Okay, so yeah, now we're going to move on to our user question of the week. So let's actually, we don't have a particularly I mean, we can kind of go rapid fire with a couple of these, but we don't have a particularly thoughtful one. But we're just going to go with one of the questions that I had. So it's not a user question, because I'm not even a user at this point. I'm just like a legend.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to go with what mine was, which was back to Smash Brothers. We're kind of going to go full circle here. Is if you could have one Zelda character added to the Smash Brothers franchise that hasn't already been in it, like Young Link or whatever, who would you add, and why? And that doesn't, it can be like Skull Kid or something like that have already been confirmed as an assist trophy, but just like for later, save it for the next game or something.
I'm gonna let you take that first, Twilight Prince.
All right, I'll lead for once. Well, right now I'm leaning toward Midna. Perhaps, I mean, that's a character we already see in Hyrule Warriors. Yeah. Those are the freshest in my mind. Now, they're not doing transformations anymore, but I was wondering if there could be some sort of dynamic where you somehow have the Imp Midna and the Twilight Princess Midna in there as well. Not sure. Maybe they could do more like what they're doing with Hyrule Warriors.
I think it'd be really cool if she was riding like a wolf, like she is in Hyrule Warriors.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, so I like the idea of doing that, having like the Midna and Wolf dynamic like Hyrule Warriors. That's my thought on that.
That's cool. I like that idea.
For me, it's kind of hard for me to answer this question because I try usually to put myself in the shoes of Sakurai when I think about questions like this. And so if I was going to be honest with myself, I would say I can't think of a character that isn't already in Smash Brothers that deserves to be in Smash Brothers. So just to keep it interesting, if I could have anyone I wanted, I would probably say Skull Kid, and I think they would have to kind of create some things out of thin air for him because he didn't really do that much as Skull Kid in Majora's Mask, but I think they could really take the dynamic of having different masks and have that as a moveset.
Could they do it like Skull Kid and Majora's Mask, like the Majora's Mask floats near him like Rosalina and Luma? Like in the mask.
That's interesting. I wasn't thinking that. But I was
I'm
more
just kidding.
thinking, since you have so many masks in that game and all of them have various functions, I think you could pull a lot of functionality from those, um, because they all grant you some sort of ability, right? Or maybe they don't in
Oh,
the game, but you could
oh,
make
oh
something
yeah,
up.
he could put on the Romney's mask and he could go in the milk bar as his final smash and put on the circus. He could put on the circus leader mask and like he'd cry a lot and then people would get depressed because it's such a sucky mask.
Yeah, I mean, you could make that like a down A smash attack. Like he cries so hard he creates two geysers of water that go to either side. I mean, you could be comical about it, but I think there's a lot of potential for mask-based
Legitimate,
moves.
yeah. Well, actually, I was gonna go probably a similar route, and now I'm feeling sort of self-conscious about it because you just sort of talked about like all the masks you could use, and I know in this game there's no more transformation characters, but what if you had like a young Link similar to the young Link that was in Melee with the three masks, Deku and Goron and Zora, and you could transform into any one of them, and you'd have to be one of them. Like at the beginning of the match, he'd like put a mask on like as his entrance, and he'd transform into that character, and you could handle it like Pokemon Trainer, and it would just be three different move sets. You have all three of them; they're all incredibly varied, obviously, and I think it'd be a cool thing to have like Mask Link or whatever you want to call him. I think that'd be awesome, and it'd be a nice Majora's Mask thing, which,
Hmm.
as we discussed earlier, we don't have enough of. So,
Yeah, now I kind of wish I picked a Majora thing as well. Then it'd be 3 for 3 with us.
well, we know you love the game. We all love the game. Okay, so that went pretty well. So I've got a couple more questions. Let's run through them real quick. Mr. Chris asks, if you had to have a Zelda tattoo, what and where would it be?
Hmm.
And then notice the wording of the question. If you had to have a Zelda tattoo, so you have to have one.
Okay, so it's a
Mm,
life
I
or death
might,
I know,
situation.
because my answer was going to be, I don't want to have one. So
yeah, I might just go the predictable route and say throw a Triforce on my hand, whatever. It'll make an interesting story. Don't if you could break the system and say a microscopic Navi on my arm that you can't see, I could do that. Uh,
I think for me, I would probably do what a lot of people have probably already thought of or have already done. I would get a heart meter uh, somewhere near where my heart is
oh,
on my
that's
chest.
cool. That's
Um,
actually
if I was a female, I would. I don't know
you
why
get
I'm
it.
saying this.
You
I would
get like
get
a
a Navi saying, "Hey, listen," behind my ear. I don't know why. I just thought of
I actually was thinking of that too, but I didn't think of the female thing. So I'm
that.
glad you said it because that would have been weird. Um, gosh, what would I even? I would get a obviously a tramp stamp.
Oh
Uh,
no.
yeah, and it would be. Um, I would definitely get the Hylian crest, and that is a completely original idea, and not suggested by Hex when we had to edit something out. Okay, so one more question. Before we end this. This is one from Zelda Knight. I was gonna do Volvagia Slayer's question, but it requires some deep thought, so I'll save that for later when we have time to think about it. This question is Zelda Knight. Should Ganondorf's moveset in Super Smash Bros. 4 be based off Hyrule Warriors or be taken from regular Zelda games? And I guess we could expand upon that by saying, if you don't think it should be Hyrule Warriors, then like what moves would you give him? And and this is again, of course, assuming that Ganondorf will be confirmed for Super Smash Bros. For Wii U.
I would say let's not take from Hyrule Warriors just because well, for one, I don't really know what it is, but two, um that's already kind of a derivative. So to take a derivative of a derivative would be kind of weird to me. Um so I would say just take his moves from what we see in game. I mean, we've got Wind Waker Ganondorf who has dual wielding swords, and I don't know if he would be Wind Waker style,
Probably not.
but
Would you prefer the dual wielding sword, or would you prefer his single sword from Twilight Princess? Which, by the way, you see, which makes an appearance in Brawl, just not during the fighting.
Which has always been silly.
This is totally off topic, but the first time I saw that, I got really mad. I'm like, the sword is right there. They know it exists. Why can't he just use it?
Yeah. No, I think I would lean towards actually the sword that he had in the tech demo from way back when, before the GameCube came out.
Space World?
Yeah, I liked that sword a lot.
Space World 2000.
Or something similar to it. They could invent one. I don't think dual wield would work if it wasn't Wind Waker Ganondorf, but maybe it could. I mean, maybe he has 3 swords and you can change between having a dual wield or a single sword. That could be an interesting mechanic. But yeah, I think definitely drop Captain Falcon's moveset. Maybe take some elements, like attributes from it, like maybe his B attack could be a giant stab that's really, really strong, but as long as it's not a punch or whatever it is right now.
Ganon punch!
Yeah, so...
I always thought you should have said that. I mean, it's so blatant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, well, I'll say something really quick, which is just that you brought back a memory when you mentioned the tech demo sword, because if Ganon wins in Melee, he'll like pose with the sword, and I'm like, whoa, that sword didn't actually appear in any actual Zelda game, but they went ahead and put it there, and of course that meant I was like, well, what if there's a way to unlock usage of the sword and not have him be Captain Falcon? But that made me think bringing back the sword from the tech demo would be kind of a nice throwback to fans of Smash Brothers. Like, hey, we hinted at this in the past, and now you can actually fight with that sword. That alone makes me like the idea of that sword being part of his moveset.
I totally agree with you guys. So I'm actually going to go a different route and talk about something else, and it's related, but it's a different take on it. I'm actually going to talk about his final smash, and I would like to see a different. Obviously, Ganon's probably going to have different costume based on whatever Zelda game they're basing him off of. Maybe they're even waiting to show him in Zelda U before they show him in Smash Brothers, because maybe that's going to be his design or something. But I want to see his final smash. His final smash in Brawl was the beast from Twilight Princess. I want to see Ganon from Ocarina of Time. The final boss, with also interestingly with dual wielding like knives or whatever it is. I think that's way cooler, and I think I'd like him to control like Giga Bowser, the final smash from that game. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, it would.
See that big thing like walking around. That's all I got. And I think that's all we got. So if you liked this podcast, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And if you've already subscribed, click the like button. We really appreciate all the support that we've already gotten from doing these podcasts. And again, we just couldn't do without you guys. And we just like having all these listeners every week and knowing that people actually like the show. So we're gonna go ahead and end this episode here. I think it's a good spot to end. You guys got anything else you want to go ahead and say before we sign off here?
Nope, I am all good.
Yeah, all good. Sounds good.
We have covered everything that we meant to cover, and so I'd like to give a special thank you to Twilight Prince 12 for showing up and doing this episode with us. To Zyber, hope you get better soon. Hopefully you're not dead, because it'd be really awkward if you actually were, and then we put this up. So hopefully that's not what happened. And again, to my stalwart co-host HextupleyooDOT. For all these guys, I'm spigelwii, and thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.